Madam Chair, we are ready to start whenever you are.
All right, I think we're ready to start the Business and Governance Committee meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 9:19 a.m. Rosie, will you call the roll, please?
Roberta Spoon,
Here.
Thomas Battaglia,
Here.
Michelle Bush,
Here.
Charles Hopquist,
Present.
Paul Kaufman is absent, Paul votes. And that concludes our roll call, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do we have a quorum?
Yes, Madam Chair, we do have a quorum this morning.
Okay. So as a reminder, when voting on an action item, please state your name first, whether you're offering a motion or offering a second. Rosie, do we have any public comment?
No, Madam Chair, we do not have any public comment today.
Thank you. Moving right on to the action items. Number 1, we have Ted LaSalvia, staff's recommendation to approve payment of the annual supplement benefit. And Ted, before you start, I think Johnny has a comment.
Thank you, Bobby. I just wanted to go on the record that board member Charlie Hogquist is a retiree of SDCERS and is therefore eligible for the annual supplemental benefit and is allowed to vote on this without a conflict of interest, given it's in the code and the benefit is equally available to everyone under the code for retirees. Thank you, Bobby.
Take it away.
Good morning. Staff recommends the board approve payment of the annual supplemental benefit to eligible retirees. According to the meeting code, the calculations for realized earnings are sufficient realized earnings to pay the annual supplemental benefit after satisfaction of the requirements of the meeting code. With that, I will open the floor to any questions.
Any questions for any member of the committee? No? Do I hear a motion? A motion. Second?
Tom will second.
Tom will second. Rosie, will you call the vote?
Yes, so Michelle Bush was our first and Tom Battaglia was our second, just to make sure that we all heard it. And now moving on with the vote, Roberta Spoon,
Yes.
Thomas Battaglia,
Yes.
Michelle Bush,
Yes.
Charles Hopquist,
Aye.
and Paul votes.
Yes.
With that, Madam Chair, the motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, Rosie. And Ted, can we move on to action item number 2?
Yes, Madam Chair. The board, SDCERS staff recommends the board approve the calendar year 2023 drop annuity rate of 2.9% effective January 1st, 2023, and the drop interest crediting rate of 2.5% for the same calendar year period. With that, I'll open the floor to any questions related to those values.
Any questions? Anybody on the committee? All right, I'll make the motion to approve. Can I have a second?
Charlie will second.
Rosie?
Yes, Madam Chair, just for the record, Roberta Spoon was our first and our second was Charlie Hogquist. And now on to the vote, Roberta Spoon,
Yes.
Thomas Battaglia,
Yes.
Michelle Bush,
Yes.
Charles Hogquist,
Aye.
and Paul votes. With that, the motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, Rosie. Great. Item number 3 has been pulled. Susan Youngclish is home and she is ill. I understand her daughter has COVID and she's feeling no symptoms. So we're going to pull that item for today. So moving on to number 4, Johnny, insurance overview and staff's recommendation to renew the fiduciary insurance.
Thank you, Bobby, and good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Before you is your annual review of our insurance program at SDCERS and also the insurance broker and staff's recommendation to renew SDCERS fiduciary insurance. Before I start, I am very excited to introduce to you our new insurance brokers at Alliant. With us today is Sean Kratz and Robert Shimke. This year, SDCERS staff issued an RFP, as we do routinely, to make sure that we are working with the best brokers that we can. And without a doubt, I'm so excited that we chose Alliant. You're going to hear a little bit more about why I chose them, and I'll let them talk about themselves. But I did want to introduce to you Sean and Robert here today. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
Sean has been with Alliant for over 20 years and manages the public pension practice nationally. He's a lead broker for 17 of the 20 California 1937 Act county systems. In addition, he represents many standalone city retirement systems like SDCERS. He's been affiliated with NASRA as well as SDCERS, the State County Retirement System Association, for nearly 2 decades. Robert joined Alliant 7 years ago and has been 100% focused on public entities with Alliant. So with that, let me, if you could move to page, that's them, do that. You can move to page 3. And Sean and Robert, you take away. Great. Thank you, John.
Thanks, John. Good morning, board members and trustees. I'm Robert Shimke. Nice to thank you for the introduction, Johnny. Just like to make one clarification. We are with Alliant. That's the insurance brokerage, not Allianz, the insurance company. So this is a common misconception that we get, and wanted to go on the record. Alliant and Allianz, 2 completely separate companies. So Alliant, the retail brokerage, which is what we are with, we are truly a specialty brokerage. As you can see, Sean and I are part of the public entity division, and more specifically, the public pension practice. So what we do, we live and play in the sandbox every day. This is what our specialization is. Some quick overview, some facts about Alliant. As you can see, we have 8,700 employees nationally. This is a very interesting and cool statistic, because when I joined Alliant 7 years ago, I was an employee around 1,600. So in about 7 years, as you can see, we're growing tremendously. We're attracting top talent, and everyone really kind of wants to be at Alliant. We are the 4th largest U.S. retail broker by revenue at $2.6 billion. That again is increasing every year. Our favorite statistic is that we are 50% employee owned, which means Sean and I both are shareholders in the company, which means we have skin in the game, and when you do well, we do well. So we really do have a vested interest in making sure our clients remain happy and are very well taken care of. So the next slide. So here's just a couple quick metrics about our public entity division, some more broad level statistics. As you can see, quite a bit of funds under our management and our retirement pension practice. We do have over 300 insurance professionals within the specialty or public entity division, focusing again on the public entity work. So we have a broad bench or deep bench to call on when Sean and I we maybe have some questions or get some advice. We've been doing this, Alliant's been doing this for over 40 years. We actually started Alliant, Robert F. Driver started in San Diego, so we've been here for quite a while. We do something a little different in we create marketable insurance programs, which we're able to kind of use the Costco terminology to bundle or to group like entities together and help drive down costs and broaden insurance coverage. So something we were able to take advantage of for SDCERS this year. We are a national leader, and Sean will kind of get into that in the public entity space and the public pension practice. Slide. As you can see here, we do have many clients that are similar to SDCERS, Los Angeles County Retirement, Los Angeles City Retirement. So again, with us having the specialization and similar clients, we are keenly aware of what is going on with your peer entities and the market that your insurance is in. So having this experience really does give us a specialization and insight into, what's going on in your world.
Excellent. Thank you, Robert, and good morning. If we can move to the next slide. So the reason that we started with the first few slides is just to really demonstrate our commitment, to the public entity space, including public pension systems. About 20 years ago, and our company again has been around literally since 1920s in San Diego and has grown obviously quite a bit since then. But really, 20 years ago, we were looking at public pensions and looking at, our competition and looking at how the insurance was being placed on behalf of public pension systems. And so we took it upon ourselves to create proprietary programs specifically for public pensions to do exactly what Robert talked about, which is to help drive down the marketplace by banding together. You're not sharing in risks. You're not, nothing is shared from an insurance policy perspective, but it's just, again, the Costco approach to go to the insurance companies worldwide and get the best negotiations done. So that's been very successful. But the other thing we want to point out is we are not just using our proprietary programs. We are first and foremost your broker, which means that we access all of the domestic and international markets around the world to ensure that when we come up with our final renewal presentations, that we are ensuring that the system is getting the best deal. So just talking a little bit more, we touched on the fact that we do represent 17 of the 20 SACR members. And that's important as well, because even though you guys aren't a county system, it's that leverage, and having SACRs behind us and our programs and what we're doing across the country with public pension systems brings a lot of value. It also brings a lot of value with our longstanding relationship with NASRA, who represents, as you know, all of the systems across the country. Collectively, with your partnership, with all of the other systems partnership, this is where we bring what we call the unfair advantage to the public pension systems. And so we're very proud of that and equally excited to be now working with all of you. Next slide. Good. Thank you. You're welcome. The next two slides will talk about SDCERS' existing insurance program, with the first slide of how the city covers SDCERS. That relationship with this plan sponsor is something that happens in many systems and has existed before I came here in 2010. So the city of San Diego provides workers' compensation coverage for SDCERS employees. Even though I work for SDCERS, I'm a city of San Diego employee. So if I'm hurt, the city of San Diego covers for workers' compensation. Flip side, as a city of San Diego employee, if I were to commit a dishonest crime in my job, or any SDCERS employee, the city's policy extends coverage to cover SDCERS employees' dishonest acts. Lastly, the city of San Diego purchases content property insurance for SDCERS' office supplies, computers, desks, monitors, but not the building itself. Next slide, please, Michelle. Thank you for driving. Appreciate it. I'm going to let Sean and Robert handle this one. And this talks about the outside policies SDCERS holds standalone. Thank you, Johnny. So, it's important, again, to the last slide to understand that co-relationship with the city and how that works from an insurance perspective. And, we do a lot of evaluation when we begin working with a new system to ensure that the city is protecting the system with certain insurance coverages that they should be, right? So that's very important, and a lot of the evaluation that we had done through the RFP process as far as the history of how you guys have handled that relationship. The current insurance that the system does procure is the fiduciary liability, the excess fiduciary liability. So you guys currently purchase $15 million in coverage with a $2 million self-insured retention, otherwise similar to a deductible. You also purchase directors and officers coverage. It is side A coverage only, which essentially means that it's for non-indemnifiable type situations or claims. And then you also have a management employment practices liability coverage along with a general liability coverage. So all of these coverages, as you can tell, one of the common themes you can see is that the effective dates for them are essentially kind of all over the year. And one of the things that we've been successful in managing, or at least looking at from a consolidation aspect, is when you do consolidate to an actual one-time effective date for the policy year, that you may actually be able to bring in even more leverage with the insurance companies because you're bringing them your entire package versus piecemealing it throughout the year. There's not a lot of negotiating power in that. And so that's one of the other things that we're going to be looking at through this renewal process, is to ensure that we're literally figuring out every way that we can better the insurance program overall for the system. And so the consolidation is something that we talked to Johnny about, and something that we're going to be heavily focused on.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what the nonprofit management employment practices liability and how that's different than general liability? Is it covering something specific that the general liability wouldn't cover?
Absolutely, great question. So employment practices liability is definitely different than general liability. So general liability really is for your slips, trips, and falls, and basically third-party lawsuits against the system for those types of issues. Employment practices really is covering any, employee that's coming and saying they've been harassed in the workplace, libel, slander, basically all of those types. So they're very, very distinctive and very separate in nature. And really, you would never co-mingle those two. Okay, if we can go to the next slide. Okay, so as we did our review of the current overall insurance program historically for the system, there are a couple of coverages that are not currently purchased. Now, Johnny's going to talk real quickly about the fact that historically for cyber liability, the system actually did purchase insurance for a period of time, but there were financial reasons that they ended up deciding not to procure that particular coverage. So Johnny, did you want to talk real quick?
Yeah, thanks. I speak so loudly, I probably don't need this microphone, but SDCERS procured cyber liability insurance for about 2 years, and it was quite affordable at the time, about $10,000 premium for several $1 million in coverage. And Sean and Robert, the experts in insurance, will explain why all public entity premiums skyrocketed to 25% greater last winter, actually. So at that time, the cyber insurer refused to cover us despite having no claims. And then when we went to the market, we were looking at 25 times the amount of premium for probably half the coverage, and then a retention level of 10 times the amount that we had before. And so it's important to remember that cyber liability insurance doesn't prevent cyber crimes. That's something that staff does. Dave does an excellent job of it. So it really is a cost mitigation tool once a cyber breach happens. How do we have the resources, the money to fix what just broke? So not having cyber insurance doesn't protect us more from a cyber breach. All it is really a cost mitigating tool. So it's important at that point to look at the premium, how much we're paying for this cost mitigation cyber insurance versus how much a breach would cost and whatnot. So for the last year, staff has not recommended and has not purchased cyber liability insurance because of what I think is the higher than really effective, viable product for which cyber insurance is out there. But that hasn't stopped us from trying. We've gone in the market, I think, 3 times, and currently we even have an application with Alliance, which I'm crossing. These 2 gentlemen will be bringing us a product that helps us navigate these waters as the premium goes up, as we figure out what is that price point for this type of coverage. But until then, we haven't just sat on our heels and said, well, it costs too much. We really built in the infrastructure for what cyber insurance offers. We have relationships with different vendors that would help us in case of a breach notification. We worked with Dave Bond and saying, do we have the adequate
infrastructure in case we have a breach, what would we do? Is there any resource that we need on top of that? So we built that structure within until and if we decide that cyber liability insurance should be part of our portfolio again. Questions about that before we move on? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Johnny. So just to touch on what Johnny had mentioned, if you look back when cyber attacks, really started to pick up, they were focused on the targets, the Walmarts, the big box stores, right? They were going after the banks and so on and so forth. And public entities for quite a long time really were still under the radar. They weren't really focusing on public entities at that time. Interestingly enough, cyber liability insurance was born out of, we probably all recall, Y2K. 1999 flipped to 2000, and all of a sudden the world was going to shut down. This is really where cyber liability was born. But from that time frame until maybe 10 years ago, the premiums were incredibly minimal, and you were getting $5 million in coverage, and it was extremely broad on the contracts for all the way it should be. And unfortunately, in the last 5 years, public entities now are the #1 target for hackers. That's cities, counties, pension systems, you name it. It's now their focus. And it is not uncommon. In fact, maybe 2-3 months ago, I got an incident that was about $1.3 million in about 10 minutes from an attack. And that ransom amount that they were demanding. And so to Johnny's point, a lot of entities are struggling getting it back into their budgets or even putting it in the budget for the first time because it is so expensive. And then when you evaluate what the coverage is that you're actually going to get, if your retention is sky high, then you have to really start doing the math to figure out, does this really make sense? Or do we continue to consider either self-insuring and so on and so forth? So one of the things that we took a deep dive in as to the last 3 times that we've gone into the marketplace, this year we are really focusing in on looking at the worldwide marketplace and beginning to have conversations with them around how you guys are best in class in how your IT runs your operation. There's ways to reposition your account instead of us getting the application, throwing it out to a bunch of markets and hoping we get something decent back. So we take a lot more extra time to really position, your submission in the worldwide marketplace, and to Johnny's point, we are going to be working diligently once again to see if there is an insurance company out there or several that may be willing to reassess the quotes that they've been giving in the first place. So, it's a very difficult market though. And, I would say that by repositioning it the way that we are, at least it's going to change some conversations, hopefully. Anything else you want to add? Okay. Any questions on cyber liability?
Does the city have cyber liability coverage?
Yeah, so not currently. So historically, the system did purchase cyber liability insurance. And then the decision was made as those premiums became intolerable based on budgets of the overall insurance program. The decision was that the business decision was made to actually not procure that coverage going forward. And so again, it's been some time that you have been self-insuring is what we call that. And we think it's a better time right now to be getting in, repositioning your account to see what we might be able to procure.
If I can follow up, did the city of San Diego, do they have cyber insurance?
They do. So the city of San Diego has cyber insurance, and that's where it gets a little tricky, right? We work with a lot of public pension systems that are tied to, obviously, their other entities. And there are only certain coverages that they're willing to extend to the public pension system for a variety of reasons. And cyber liability really hasn't been one that between the city and the system that agreement or conversation, at least we're not aware of, has been done. That's all.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding cyber liability?
So are you considering putting together a pool, like a high-risk pool of all of your clients?
Yeah, so not dissimilar to what we're going to talk about on the fiduciary liability, and that really was kind of the birthplace of the program that we created for public pension systems 20 years ago. That's been very successful in that exact manner, having systems band together to drive down the marketplace without sharing each other's risk. That's the key. So it's not a pool, it's just what we call a group purchase environment or group purchase program. So we actually do have a couple of internal cyber liability programs for public entity in general. So we are going to access those markets to see if they would be willing to offer something more tolerable, share what the history has been, with your procurement of that coverage, and then try to negotiate with those two specific programs that we have internally at Alliant. But it doesn't stop there. We're going to be taking that same submission that we've repositioned, and we're going to be going out to the worldwide marketplace. So it'll be both. We're going to leverage the group purchase programs that are already in place. Now, keep in mind, even though the group purchase programs, they don't always take on everybody, right? So that's our job is to try to negotiate with that program that already writes a lot of other public entities in the program that have been accepted to say, look, they check off all of the boxes. And what I mean by that is the key thing that they're so strict upon is what you guys do really well, is the IT function, is what are you doing to protect the two things in cyber liability. One is going to be impersonation fraud, and then the other is going to be ransomware. Those are the two biggest issues with public entities. And they have literally questionnaires that Johnny and team have to fill out that are 3 pages long that your IT folks have to get involved in because it is in total different speak than a lot of us speak. And if they don't check every single box, there's a chance the insurance companies will not take on that risk. And so it's a very volatile negotiation and getting them to understand that you guys are best in class and that you guys are protecting the assets of the system and the fiduciary responsibilities that you all have. So long story short, yes, we're going to approach more of a group purchase atmosphere with a couple of different programs that we're able to do that with. And then we're also going to basically work with all of the balance of the cyber carriers on a worldwide basis. And then we're just going to have to see what. Does that help?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. So moving on, another emerging coverage that public entities are facing is deadly weapons. So unfortunately, as we all know, it's not just school shootings. It's not just disgruntled employees going into an office space. Public entities are just affected as anybody. And in the last 5-7 years, this has been this emergence of events. And so like we do at Alliant, we created a proprietary program specifically for public entities to essentially provide coverage for on-site instances or incidents for all forms of deadly weapons. And so when you hear deadly weapon, most people think of a gun. Well, a lot of times they can use anything. They can use a card, they can use a knife, they can use a bat. It really doesn't matter. And so the definitions that we've negotiated and have come through with are extremely broad, in fact, broader than anything else available in the industry. And so as we evaluate, again, your current insurance program, this was another area that we at least would like to educate you on so that then you can make a business decision on whether or not the system should be procuring this type of insurance. I can tell you in that same 5 to 7 years, we have definitely seen an uptick in public pension systems purchasing this type of coverage. The other benefit to it is that it provides so much services, not just the insurance limit, but it provides boots on the ground, immediate media and press. They really work with your system if you were to have an incident immediately as soon as it happens. And so there's a lot of additional benefits that we can provide more information on that we will provide to Johnny and Melanie. But it is something you should consider. It's affordable coverage. The limit is very adequate. But the amount of services that you get should something bad happen, you can't really quantify that. And so, again, that's another piece of the review that we've done that we'll be further talking with Johnny and Melanie about and providing more information and see what those quotes look like. But those are really the two coverages through our evaluation that we want to make sure that you guys have everything in front of you to make that decision at this upcoming event. Next slide. Sorry. Okay, so we've touched on a lot here. This slide specifically is talking about your upcoming fiduciary, excess fiduciary, and Side A D&O coverage. We are currently in the marketplace right now on a worldwide basis, negotiating on your behalf. We do have good news from your incumbent carriers or your current carriers on the fiduciary. They and we were willing or able to have them look at our national proprietary program. And as a result of that, we've been able to come up with at least the first indication or quotes at a complete flat premium with about 22 additional material enhancements to your coverage. And those have been outlined to Melanie and to Johnny and can be further sent on to you folks. But at the end of the day, we're getting very good results in using our leverage in the marketplace for your fiduciary renewal as it stands now. There's also negotiations and conversations around, you guys currently have a $2 million SIR. We are pushing very hard to get an option to drastically reduce that retention or not much more in premium. And again, that $2 million retention should have come down $1 million, $500,000, whatever that number is going to be. And if you can get that for a very small sliver of additional premium, any event that you were to have is going to save the system a tremendous amount of money. So we're not finalized yet because we've just been in the marketplace a few weeks now. But those are all of the reports and information that will be coming back to Johnny and Melanie on. And then obviously from there can make a final decision on the overall renewal. And with that, I'll turn it over to Johnny for the recommendation.
Sure, next slide. Thank you. Again, we're still in the process of getting all the quotes in. And we meet in November, but our insurance expires in December, and we meet in January. So we're asking for a little different vote than we normally do, in that what we're asking for is for you, the board, to give me, the general counsel, the authority to bind fiduciary insurance for SDCERS with at least the same coverage, a $25 million coverage, as the current policy with the premium not to exceed $235,000. I think that'll give Alliance and I the flexibility to continue to negotiate what we have. I really do like what the incumbent is offering. In this world, I don't think I've seen anything not cost more. So that's one. Two, we have a few thousand more employees than we did last year. That should cause an increase in coverage, and it hasn't. I mean, we're also increasing the coverage terms, as Sean mentioned. So I am very happy with what we have in our hand. I'm just not ready to commit to this is the product we want until we hear back from other insurers. So the recommendation is in front of you, and I do have a question.
I just wanted to clarify with me, we don't have a couple thousand more employees. I haven't
I'm
blown
sorry.
the budget. It's the
Members,
property transfer to it, just more memberships that we're taking care of.
that's my first mistake this year. Thank you. Any questions? Otherwise, I will need a first and a second, please.
Thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation. Thank you very much.
Great.
And Johnny, thank you for your work on this. It's very important and it was very well presented. So I will make the motion. Do we have a second?
All those.
Second by Paul. Rosie, will you call?
Yes, our first mover was Roberta Spoon, our second mover was Paul Rose, and now to the vote, Roberta Spoon,
Yes.
Thomas Battaglia,
Yes.
Michelle Bush,
Yes.
Charles Hopkins,
Aye.
And Paul votes. That the motion passes 5-0, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thanks, Rosie. And Johnny, you stayed up there. Staff's recommendation to amend various policies.
Yes, there you go. But thank you so much. Every meeting, this board goes through its governance policies, and it's just an amazing best practice. And so I appreciate the moments in the review that you do. The review of these governance documents is routine, something we do every 3 years for most policies, some even more frequent. My report in front of you details the substantive recommendations that the staff has given you. I do want to highlight 2 though, which I think are important. Staff is recommending that the board meeting policy be amended to match the committee meeting policy, which is to say that if you don't have a quorum of your committee or your board here, you just can't do any business. You don't have a meeting, you don't have any business. There's some questions sometimes of can we just talk about everything but not vote? And really the answer should be that you don't conduct any business unless you have a quorum of that board. Okay. The second recommendation is one that comes from IRS guidelines and also comes from a review from our outside tax counsel, QTAC Rock, which the audit committee will hear more in detail next week. And that's a recommendation to several different steps the IRS wants you to take when you're looking for a participant and you're looking for a beneficiary before you forfeit that benefit, before you move on to the next person. So staff is recommending a new board rule, Rule 9.30, which defines what reasonable efforts require staff to take to find a beneficiary participant. With that, I'll take any questions. Otherwise, I will ask for a first and a second, please.
Any questions? Hearing none, do I have a first?
Charlie offered me first.
Second?
Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Can you call the roll, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. So just for the record, our first mover was Charles Hopkins, our second mover was Paul Volz. And now to the vote, Roberta Spoon,
Yes.
Thomas Bataya,
Yes.
Michelle Bush,
Yes.
Charles Hopkins,
Aye.
Paul Volz.
Yes.
And with that, the motion passes 5-0, Madam Chair.
That's great. So that's it for our action items. Moving on to the reports. Our first report is Cynthia Quinn.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Did you guys know that back in 2008, we started holding annual membership meetings for our membership? It was a decision that was made because the system was kind of picking itself back up, and it was decided that it would be good to give a sort of state of the system address and restore some faith in our membership. So here we are, 14 years later, rocking it with our annual membership meetings. And we held this year's in person for the first time, which we haven't done since before the pandemic. So it was wonderful to see members. And our theme was based on our core values, and it emphasized the strength and stability of the pension system and our excellent governance. So we weren't sure if people would show up. We were very, very happy that about 75 people showed up, which was wonderful, an enthusiastic crowd. And we also had representation from our retiree leadership, and our very own Charlie Hodquist was there. And our keynote speaker was board president Paul Kaufman, who did a fine job of kicking things off. And our presenters included Karina Coleman, our investments head, and then Marcel and Greg and myself. And it was just a very nice event. We held it over at Balboa Park and gave folks just a good idea of how well things are going. And it's just lovely to see how times have changed, because back in the day, we used to get a lot of questions about stability and how things were going. And now it's just kind of a lovely round of applause. So thank you all for your leadership, and to our team for the work that they put into helping people keep the faith. So I'm very pleased that went well. Additionally, we have elections coming up because 2 of our elected members have their terms ending on March 31st of 2023. So the seats that will be having their terms come up are the elected retiree board member, which is currently held by Charles Hogquist, who is elected by the retired members. And then Lou Maggi sits in the elected active police safety seat, who's elected by police officers out there. And those terms will be ending. And so Jessica Taylor, our communications manager, works with an outside vendor who specializes in handling all aspects of these elections. We have two parts to the election. First, there's a nominating period where anyone who wants to run can go out and gather 10 signatures, which are needed to qualify to run, 10 signatures of people who can vote, not just the neighbors. Then after that, a voting period is held, and that is where the actual board members are elected by the membership. So we plan to start the nomination process right after Christmas, the holiday period, and that'll end in mid-January. And then the voting period will be the last 2 weeks in February, assuming that we have more than one candidate for each seat go to the voting process, which is great timing because we'll then have the results by the March board meeting. And then whoever are the two new elected members will then serve a 4-year term that will go from April 2023 to March of 2027. And look forward to a very smooth process. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question, Cynthia. If somebody missed the annual meeting, they're dying to see what happened. Are they just out of luck?
I'm going to reproduce the annual meeting right now. Hope you have your notes with you. Thank you, Marcel. We do always record the annual meeting, and we had it recorded this year, and it is in the production process right now. And as soon as it is ready, which I'd say in about another week, then there will be a link on the front page of the website, and it will be available forever on our YouTube channel. And we promoted that in our outreach materials as well. So thank you for the question. Anybody else?
Great, Cynthia. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent report.
Thank you.
Marcel, benefits.
Good morning. So once again, I'm going to give you a quick update on Prop B. So since our last meeting, well, right before our last meeting, we had welcome letters go out to the approximately 3,200 new members. And that meant that they all wanted to talk to us. So the call center had about a 10% increase in calls in September, which they handled beautifully. We also have about a third of those new members have already accessed the online portal. So they have engaged with us and are doing well. The pieces that we are still working on right now, there were about 200 people that had unusual circumstances. So they were people that were eligible to have joined on July 8th, but because either they were out on sick leave, they had interesting breaks in their service. We've had to do some more work on those, and we anticipate getting that information from Chiron tomorrow and passing it on to the city so they can contact those employees who potentially may be new members. And the city is in negotiations with what we call phase 3. That's the approximately 2,000 people who worked for the city during Prop B that separated service before July 8th. So what's going to happen to them? Are they going to be able to join? Sandra touched on that briefly at Disability Committee. Will they be people looking for disabilities? Our current membership, about 10% of our members have reciprocity with another system. So we anticipate that those 2,000 members will have similar behavior patterns, and that will probably dictate what their choices are as far as joining the system. The other thing I want to touch on is open enrollment, retiree health open enrollment. As you may recall, that got moved from being in May for an August 1st date to being now in November for a January 1st date. That matches with the city's open enrollment program. So it is the city's risk management department that procures that insurance. So open enrollment is in process right now. The booklets did go out timely and arrived in people's mailboxes. We have seen a good clip of calls coming through. And this will be for a full 1 year of insurance open enrollment. Happy to answer any questions.
Hearing no questions. Thank you. Great report. Exciting times, right?
Yes.
Michelle. Oh, Dave.
Good morning. I'd like to introduce Sean Kilpack as our new IT operations manager. Sean will manage our voice and data network, servers, desktops, and our security posture. Sean comes to us from the City Department of IT with a wealth of experience he previously, at the city of IT, he was running the city's master service agreements. Prior to that, Sean worked for the district attorney office as a IT manager. Sean was also a manager for the San Diego Police Department in his previous lives. This is a very important position, brand new to SDCERS, in recognition of the increased scope of responsibilities of SDCERS with cybersecurity audits, and that we recognize that we need a hands-on day-to-day manager of our voice and data operations. With my imminent retirement, I want to assure the committee and the board that SDCERS IT is in great hands with Sean's peer, who runs the application services side of the house, and Sean Kilpack now in place, that you're in fantastic hands. Couldn't be in better hands. This is my last B&G meeting. And in my 15 years that I've had the pleasure of serving the board and our membership, I'd like to thank the IT team who I rely on for everything. I'd like to thank Mr. Greg Rademacher, our CEO, for his support, and the committee and the board for their support as well. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, Dave, Dave, I have to tell you, I've always felt very secure with you in charge of all of this. So thank you very much for your service all of these years.
Thank
It's
you.
been a big job, and there have been some tremendous changes during your tenure here, and you handled this seamlessly. So thank you.
Thank
We
you
will
very much.
miss you. We will miss you.
Thank you so much.
Do we have any questions from anybody on the committee? Board members? Greg, you always have some.
I've always got something. Well, I wanted to really just mirror Bob's comments with regards to Dave Bond. He has just been a real treasure for this organization. He's a critical part of our leadership team in defining the culture and helping us all understand the importance of not clicking on that email. It's just been a really positive influence. And as I share, is that things always break, and David and his team have always just immediately got into fix-it mode and just really have a really good uptime experience with all of our data systems and puts on a very solid foundation. And as I mentioned in our last meeting, I have groveled, I have thrown money at him, I have done all sorts of things to get him to enter a 5-year drop period. He just won't do it. So I really just appreciate you, Dave, and I'm gonna miss having you on the team, and this actually just what you do for SDCERS, and I appreciate you for leaving us in a very solid position as put on wine shirts and play your guitar and do all those fun things. So
Are you changing your phone number?
I'll turn in my SDCERS stuff.
Thank you, Kevin. Johnny, do we have a closed session today?
We don't.
We don't. All right. So with that, I believe we will adjourn this meeting. It's 10:07.